It's our nature. We're born actors. So imagine also you have this radical realism where you could see into them. You could actually see through the opaqueness of people and understand what's going on, not completely, but you have a better idea if they really do like you, if they really are interested in your ideas, if they are planning to help you or planning to sabotage you. Think of all the mistakes you would avoid and all the powerful forms of connection you could create with people. It would be awesome. And then finally, think about the world at large. So the world has what we call the zeitgeist, since you speak German. I'm going to use some German.
Spirit of the times.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a spirit of the times, right? And this thing is always changing. It's never static, right? So you walk through life, you don't really know where the world is headed. You don't realize that in 2 or 3 years, your career is going to be hitting a wall. You're going to be downsized. You're going to be out of work. You don't know, what's the next step, what's the next move to make. And then also you start a business not realizing that business is not, going to be viable in 6 months.
Right.
Imagine finally that you have that ability to see what's going on in the world, to see realistically the trends happening. So radical realism is the most powerful form of thinking that you can have in my world. And it's not something that's depressing. It's not, people think of realism as kind of ugly and drab. They think fantasy is wonderful and beautiful and reality is kind of meh. But actually, radical realism is very inspiring. It's a very beautiful way of looking at the world, to sort of accept this is the world as it is, as opposed to how I want it to be or wish it to be, is actually a profoundly moving and almost, I hate to use the word poetic, but to see the world, to see things as they are, is very, very powerful and very inspiring, I find. So
it's like a superpower, the way that you phrase it, though, as well, right? Because no one can see the future, but if I have a conversation with my boss and I say, I think that went really well, he's going to support my ideas, but really it's become so clear to somebody who's trained or read your work, for example, that what he's going to do is use this conversation against me the first chance he gets. It would pay if I knew that, right? I should already be looking for another job based on what I know and how that conversation went. But a lot of us, we get blindsided. And every Friday we give advice on our Feedback Friday episodes. People write in with problems. And there's a lot that can't be foreseen or foretold, so to speak. But there's a lot where I think I've read this letter and it's really clear from the details that this person sees the writing on the wall. Maybe they read your book, not quite sure. But they just go, can't put my finger on it, but this happened before and that happened before. And now with this happening, I'm pretty sure that I'm on the outs.
Right.
And I say, look, you don't know if that's true, but you should plan almost as if that were true. And,
right.
We give them a strategy for that. And it sure pays to be ready, especially if you're going to get let go from a job or you're going to be forced to move or you're dealing with something in a relationship. So yeah, it's almost like a superpower. There's so many notes that I have about, allaying people's insecurities and so the so-called dark side stuff that we kind of talked about in the beginning of the conversation, but maybe we actually flip the script a little bit or change gears and start with some positive career advice, because it is tempting to stay with the dark side of the force when we have conversations about power and influence, I think, and not a lot of people probably go with the positive stuff when you're sitting in front of them, right? I don't know, I could be wrong. You do mention in some of the daily laws, there are chapters about reconnecting with your childhood passions. I would love to talk about this because a lot of people, I think the majority of people, like you said, go to school and through school having no idea what they should do. And reconnecting with your childhood passion seems like a really good way to at least get started on the path of figuring that out.
Well, the first chapter in Mastery was called Discover Your Life's Task. And so the first month of the Daily Laws is about that, the month of January, because it's really, if I had to say it, Jordan, it's the most important thing in your life right now, particularly if you're younger. If you're in your 50s or 60s, it's getting a little bit late, I'm sorry to say, but it's never really too late. But if you're younger, man, that is the most important thing you could learn. I can't emphasize it enough because I have studied throughout my years and the thousands of books I've read for my research, biographies of the most successful, famous, creative people, and I've done consulting with people on the highest levels. So I've seen this firsthand, and I've done it in my research. And inevitably, these are people who understood at some point in life that this is what I was destined to follow. This is a path for me. Now, that path might have been, most people, it's like a zigzag. You don't have a straight line. This is what I was meant to do. It's never like that. It wasn't for me. But you kind of have an idea, and it becomes clearer and clearer, and you find that path, and it leads to so much power. You become so creative and so energized because you enjoy your work, you learn faster, you're engaged emotionally with what you're doing. It is so important. And a lot of people who were successful had a clear idea when they were 5 or 6. Some people discovered it at the age of 12 or 18. Me, I really didn't discover it till I was about 35.
Is this 60 jobs later or 80 jobs later?
Probably 80 jobs later when I got to write the 48 Laws of Power. But anyway, so it's not easy, and a lot of people get confused. And why do you get confused? Well, the psychologist Abraham Maslow, who studied a lot of children, for instance, he said that children, and you'll maybe know this with your 2-year-old, they have what he calls impulse voices. And these are voices that say, I like this, I don't like that. I like this kind of food, I hate this, I'm going to spit it out. Right? I like this person, I don't like that person. They're very clear. They know what they like and what they don't like. It's so obvious to them in an almost pre-verbal sense.
It's like binary. Yeah. It's just, there's almost no lukewarm. With my kid anyway, he's either open-minded or it's not happening.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
really kind of on and off, and that's it.
That's exactly. So everyone had that because it's the nature of being an infant in this world, right? Because it's natural. It's a voice that's naturally inside all of us. And then as you get older, you start listening to Mr. Harbinger and Mrs. Harbinger telling you, don't do this, Jaden, do this. This is what you should behave like this. Don't behave like that. And the kid starts getting a little confused. So I say, well, my voice tells me to do this, but I'm told not to do that. And slowly you go through a process where you're not hearing it anymore. You're hearing what teachers tell you. You're hearing what parents tell you. You're hearing what peers are telling you about what's cool, what's not cool. You're hearing what social media nowadays is telling you. I'm talking about like your career, what you were meant to do. And then you arrive, you're 18, 19 years old, and you haven't a clue because you can't hear that voice anymore. And you're going to try this, that, the other, not based on things that are deep inside of you, but based on what other people have told you you should do or what they think is cool. And you're going to end up trapped. You're going to end up choosing a career path that seems seductive and interesting and lucrative. And 5 years down the line, you realize it doesn't really interest me. And you hit a wall. And you go, fuck, man, what's going on with my life? You start maybe drinking. I know I'm giving a little exaggerated scenario here, but you start drinking.
I thought you were just narrating my exact life story, but continue. So far, it's spot on.
You get addicted to online porn, on and on and on and on and on, right?
That's funny.
Okay, so, and then you're 30, and then it's starting to get a little late, right? Okay, so the problem is, how do you clear away all of that noise, that white noise that's drowning out your impulse voices, and actually hear what was your voice when you were 2 years old, right? And so it's a process. I've done it in consulting with people, trying to help them figure it out. People will say, Robert, I have no idea. So, I haven't a clue what I was meant to do in this world, right? You talk about my early childhood, I can't remember anything. Okay, so it's not, for a lot of people, it's not obvious or easy, and I understand that. But we go through a process, if I'm able to do that with them, online or in person sometimes, where we reconstruct some of the early memories of things that really excited them when they were a kid and things that they hated. And a book that I always recommend to people, it's on the shelf somewhere right behind you, I don't see it right now, called The 5 Frames of Intelligence by Howard Gardner. A really good book.
We'll link to that in the show notes.
Okay. The idea is, we normally associate intelligence with kind of book learning and intellectual learning, but he says there are 5 different kinds of intelligence, and each is equally valid and important. One of them will be obviously words and language, which was something that I was attracted to. Some of it will be with figuring out patterns. It leads to like a mathematician or somebody interested in statistics. Another one's a little more abstract. I can't remember which one that is. Leads to like music. Then there's kinetic intelligence.
Like athletes.
Yeah, it's all about your body. And that's a very high form of intelligence. We don't think of it that way, but it is a form of intelligence. There's a social intelligence where it's all about people. right? And he makes the point that a child has one of those forms of intelligence that dominates inevitably. Some people might have another one that's kind of in the background, but one of them inevitably dominates in them, right? And if you choose a career that's not really in alignment with what you're naturally gifted for, your brain was wired in a particular way. It's genetic, okay? Right? And if you're not following that, forget it, you'll never get anywhere. So we go through a process of trying to figure out what is, just in the most general way, let's not get so specific about your actual career choice. What is that form of intelligence that you're inclined towards? It's not difficult. Were you really attracted to sports and movement? Do you find you're most joyous when you're like dancing or running, and that's what gets you excited and you think about that? Okay, well, that's probably in some ways where your brain is wired. Is it words and just the sound of words that kind of obsess you and fascinate you like it did when I was a kid? You should probably be involved in some form of writing, right? Okay, so we go through that process. What is your frame of intelligence? We kind of determine that. And then we kind of reconstruct certain key moments in your childhood where you did something and it felt right. Now, a lot of people don't have that. I maintain that everybody has it. You have to kind of dig. But you did something, and in the process of doing it, it felt like there was kind of an ease to it, as opposed to learning math when you don't like math. There's no ease involved, right? For some people, that ease is in math. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's kind of put our finger on that for a little bit, on and on and on. And then as we get older, I like to look at what people hate. So when I was 23, I discovered that I hated working for other people.
Well,
That's why I had 60 some different jobs.
that makes sense.
I don't like the political games. I don't like all the bullshit. I don't like all the stuff, all the things you have to play and pretend. I'm an entrepreneur. It took me a long time to figure it out because I never had a job more than 11 months in my entire life.
Wow.
It took me a time, okay, I should be working for myself because I don't like working for other people. So if we detect in this person that they don't like that, and that's a lot of people, I'm afraid, in the world today,
Yeah.
you should be an entrepreneur. You should be working for yourself eventually. So that's part of the process that we go through. It's more complex than that, but that gives you an idea of what it's like.
I love this because when I was a kid, I learned how to build out of like little parts from Radio Shack an FM radio transmitter. And it was kind of interesting because I would solder these little things in, and my dad was a mechanical engineer, and he goes, wow, I wonder if my kid's going to be an electrical engineer. And then when I built it and it didn't work, it was frustrating, but someone helped me fix it. And then I could transmit my voice to the radio, probably like, 50 feet away. And that was the part that was the most interesting. And I realized I didn't really care about making the thing as much as I cared about somehow being able to talk to my friends and things like that. So I wanted to turn the power up on this thing. And I learned that you could do that by breaking federal law and attaching a high gain antenna.
And then communicating with the Russians.
Well, yes, yeah, accidentally communicating with the Russians. Yeah, this is like an 80s Disney movie or something like that, like Cloak and Dagger. But I wanted to be, I said, I want to be able to talk to everyone in the neighborhood on their radios. And they were like, that's super illegal. You can't do that. And my mom sort of put the kibosh on that project. Then I go through this whole path, and I'm good at studying, and I go through college, and I get good grades, and I decide I guess I should go to law school because more school is better. So then I become a lawyer, but I already knew I didn't want to become a lawyer. And then I start the podcast in my second year of law school, and I end up on Sirius XM satellite radio. And then I quit law, and I come back to this, and I didn't remember that when I was a kid I wanted to be on the radio.
Wow.
I only remembered it probably 8 years plus after doing this.
That's a perfect example. Yeah.
If I'd frickin' listened to myself, I could have gone to broadcasting school.
No.
Whatever,
Everything's for a reason. It was better that way. First of all, your law career taught you some interesting things that you're never going to forget.
That's true.
There's some skill sets that were created then. And then if you had found your way to podcasting too early, it wouldn't have the same meaning to you. That's true. Now you're so excited that you found the right thing because you kind of hated law and law school, that it means much more, and you actually are more motivated to follow it through. Like if I had been offered to write a book when I was 24, instead as opposed to 35, 36, it would have never worked. I didn't have the
Yeah, that makes
experience. I
sense.
didn't have the desperation, etc.
That makes sense. I mean, I didn't even get into podcasting because I thought it would be fun to do a show. I got into podcasting because I was recording a lecture of a course that I was teaching and I needed to put it online. And
Wow.
podcasting was the only way to
Wow,
put an
you've had like
MP3.
80 different jobs.
Yeah, I mean, this was during law school. I was
Oh.
I was teaching a networking class, and I kept I said, I'm giving the same damn talk every week. I need to record it on my Sony minidisc player, take it, and then get it to my computer, make an MP3 file, and put it on the internet. But there was no SoundCloud, there was no YouTube, you know. So my friend said, "Hey, there's podcasting. You can put these files online," and that was the birth of the
What
show.
year are we talking about?
2006.
That was just the beginning of
Very
podcasting.
beginning. I think we were one of the first 800 or first 1,000 shows.
I can only remember my first podcast was like in 08. And I was like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, it's like a
Or
downloadable
07.
radio show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and here we are. So you're right. It sort of makes sense because if someone said, "Hey, you should start a podcast," I'd go, "What? I'm not going to be some guy who records stuff in his basement. That's dumb." And then I did that for a long time, and here we are.
Yeah.
What do we do when we realize we've chosen the wrong career? Like if we just get up and we realize, look, I'm not just burned out. I'm not for years. I'm finally going to do something about it. What is that thing that we do?
Well, one thing, just to backtrack a minute here, one thing I left out, the reason why you want to follow this path isn't just because it's some kind of mystical destiny sort of idea. The human brain works best. We learn fastest when we're emotionally engaged, when we're interested and excited by something. The brain opens up, we become like a sponge because we want to learn, and our attention is much deeper, and so we learn faster. So if you choose the wrong career for whatever reason, you know, like you go to law school and you're kind of half listening as the professor's droning on, you're kind of half reading the books. Yeah. You're not involved in it, and so you're not learning fast enough, right? And if you don't learn fast enough, creativity, which is what we all want, is a function of the intensity of your knowledge, of your the information you have absorbed. The faster you absorb information, the more thoughts and associations you create in the brain. It starts going all the time, and ideas are coming to you. If you take 5 years to learn something, that stuff going on in the brain won't happen. So that's why we want to do it. Okay, so you're going to find out in your career that you are not emotionally engaged, that isn't happening. The gears aren't connecting. You're tuning out. You're not paying attention, right? And you kind of realize that. Okay, so you have to be able to realize that. And not a lot of people are going through their 20s, for instance, because they're going after a big paycheck. They're unaware that they're actually not really attuned to to what they're supposed to be learning. Okay, but once you have that moment, it kind of depends on how old you are. So there's not like a single formula for what you should do. So if you're 24 and you realize you made the wrong choice, that's great. Now we can go through a process and you can make a fairly radical shift in your career decision because you haven't wasted. I'm not saying wasted, that's too harsh a word, but you haven't spent 15 years in something not relevant to you. It's only been a couple of years. All right, let's go through the process of figuring out what you should do, and let's kind of change your skill set, right? Let's start heading towards that direction of what you were intended to do. You can make a more radical shift. But if you're in your 30s, I wouldn't recommend that because you need to make a living, right? You have learned things, you have learned certain skills. So what I recommend is not a radical shift, but a more subtle shift, heading more in that direction. And that might include keeping the job that you have, but at night going to school or online, learning some new skills that you now can quit. Your plan is to quit this job in 2 or 3 years, but you will have learned things that will allow you to quit and go on to this other path. Or you figure out a way to kind of shift it. So I knew a woman, Allison Hope Weiner, I don't know if you know her.
Mm-mm.
She has a podcast.
Many people have. There are 2 point whatever million.
I thought everyone knew each other.
Yeah, we all hang out. Okay. Yeah, it's a really, really big cafe.
Anyway, she studied law, and then she realized that she wanted to be a writer. And so what she did is she went into legal journalism. That was how she made a shift. You know, because that was she could still make a living. She could become a writer, and then she learned true writing skills, and then she could like maybe write a novel if she wanted to at that point, kind of thing. So that's the kind of more gradual shift. If you're in your 40s,
Right.
it's even more gradual that you have to do. But the thing is, you've all your life, you've been accumulating experiences. You have to keep that in mind. So even when I was working in Greece, because I landed on the island of Crete one summer and I got very sick and I ran out of money and I was in a hospital.
Oh my gosh.
And then I came out and I had no money to get back to Paris, wherever I was living. I had to go work in construction.
You were literally stranded in Crete?
Crete.
Like
Yeah.
the island, is that where the Minotaur lives? Is that the
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
Knossos, yes.
Wow.
Well, he doesn't live there
Right.
anymore, but he was from there.
Right. It was
Yeah,
that's where he was from. Yeah. That's a and this is like not there's no internet at this point. You can't just be like, "Hey, somebody wire me some money."
If I told you what year it was, you'd be shocked.
Yeah, I don't want to make you feel
yeah. We're talking, prehistoric period. No internet, nothing. I mean, I could have made a phone call and had money wired, sure, but I was embarrassed. I didn't want to have to involve my parents. I didn't even tell them I was in a hospital.
Oh, wow.
So I'm working in construction, and it was a really weird world where the boss was Greek, and all of the people working for him doing the construction work were like Australians and Americans and English, all blonde, blue-haired, blue-eyed, not blue-haired, blue eyes. It was like the reverse of here, because we were all people who had been stranded.
Yeah, everyone just got out of the hospital.
Yeah. So I was like ripping nails off of boards, etc. Man, I hated it. It was the worst job. I know that I'm not destined for doing construction.
Uh-huh.
So the long-winded point of this anecdote is that I learned everything taught me what I'm good at, what I hate. I know I'm not good with my hands. That only made it clearer to me, etc.
Yeah, you went through a long process of elimination to get there.
So the point is, you're learning. Don't just like say, "Oh, I did this job. I got nothing out of it." You get something out of everything. And if you're in your 30s, for instance, combining your skill sets, so combining writing with law is very powerful, because we live in a world where you have such access to information that the best entrepreneurs are combining things that nobody ever thought of.
Exactly.
And starting a kind of business that involves kind of very strange skill sets, but is so unique that it takes off. So never give up, never say that this was wasted time. Nothing is wasted.
I love the idea, the tip, for lack of a better word, or the instruction that you can compare the moments that you did what others wanted you to do versus what you felt, and the moments when you did what you wanted to do, especially if you can remember those as a kid, to bring out the ideas, or at least an idea of what might be right for you. Because if I look back and my parents go, "Oh my gosh, you bugged us and you rode your bike to Radio Shack 500 times and you bugged us for money to buy these extra pieces and you wanted to take the antenna off the house that we used to get cable and connect it to your device." That was the stuff that was really lighting me up, and later on getting in trouble messing with the phone system and things like that. People thought, "You're going to become an engineer," but really I liked the communication element. It just didn't really occur to me because I was too busy stealing long distance calls from Ma Bell.
Wow, you could have been a criminal too.
I was just juvenile and didn't get caught, right? I did get caught once, but that's a different story that I'll have to bring that out on another show. But the advice I think that you wrote about in the Daily Laws, I think you phrased it, always stick to what makes you strange and weird. And that's surprisingly really good advice, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the people that are really kind of reach the apex of power, like an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs or a rock star, people in politics who we kind of hold as like icons, you can honestly say that there's nobody else like them, right? They're one of a kind. They're weird. They're strange, right? And it's because they're not afraid of what makes them different. So what happens when you're younger, when you're 4 or 5, you know something strange about you. You're kind of connected. You're in a dream world. And then you enter school and people start saying, "Oh, that's weird." And the idea of being different kind of gets a negative connotation, right? And you want to conform, you want to be part of the group, there's peer pressure. And so the idea of being different and strange kind of has a negative tint. Although we might ostensibly say, oh, it's good to be different and weird, we actually are afraid of it deep down inside
Sure.
because it comes with criticism, it comes with people kind of making fun of us, etc. So your source of power in life is actually what makes you weird and strange, right? It makes you different. So I make the point in Mastery and in the Daily Laws that there's never going to be another Jordan Harbinger in this world. Your DNA has never occurred before and will never occur again. And your parents and their DNA and their genetic component and how they raised you will never be replicated. So you are one of a kind by nature. It's irrefutable, right? Okay, so there's something so very different about you. And it's hard to put into words because some of it's genetic, some of it's early education. And what makes you different is the source of what you want to lean into. Because if we can say that, there are 20 Jordan Harbingers out there, they all have the same idea. There's no power behind it, right? You can be replaced by 19 other Jordan Harbingers who are doing the same thing. But if you're the only one thinking of this thing, if you're the only one creating it, that is the ultimate in power. Now, that's the ideal. It's hard to reach, right? But to the degree that you know what makes you different and you lean into it and you exploit it, that's where the realm of power lies. Now, I don't want to seem egocentric here, so I have to be a little bit careful. But
it's okay. Look, it's a podcast. You can blow.
Well,
you can blow as much hot air as you want.
I know I'm the greatest, anyways. It doesn't matter. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But to talk about myself here for a second,
go for it.
As I said, my arc was I kind of had a failure. I was a bit of a loser by the time I was 35, 36. I tried all sorts of different things, and then I was asked if I had any ideas for books, and I kind of described this process in the Daily Laws. And it was this very interesting man, Joost Elfers, who was a book packager. We were in Italy at the time. And I kind of improvised this idea that turned into the 48 Laws of Power. It was sort of a nice chance encounter. It was a beautiful day in Venice, Italy, and I gave a really great pitch, right? And so when I created the book, because he got so excited, he said, Robert, I'll pay you to live while you write half the book, and then we'll sell it. And so when I started the process, naturally my mind gravitated towards other books out there.
Sure.
Right? And then I just wasn't comfortable with that. And I just sort of thought, I want to tell stories. I love telling stories. When I first pitched the idea to this man, I told him a story. That's how I naturally am. I'm actually more of a novelist in some ways. I like creating drama and stories. And so I started writing stories like little parables for the 48 Laws of Power. And then I thought, I want to be able to tell the meaning of this story and not just leave it out there. So I wrote this as what's known as the interpretation of the story.
Is this like the director's cut on a DVD where they're narrating how they made the movie?
A little bit.
A little bit.
You mean what I'm doing right now?
No, just the meaning of the story. Because as a non-writer, I'm not super familiar with that.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, okay.
I was just groping in the dark. And basically, the short end of it is, I was kind of creating my own thing, right? Kind of in a haphazard way. I was following in this path that was me, that was weird, creating stories, kind of interpreting them, then giving you some theory, then having quotes that were in kind of shapes, and then having things on the side material with passages from fairy tales and fables. You know how, right?
Yeah, those little like boxes, sidebar, whatever they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it side material. Anyway, I ended up creating this book that you could hate it for very many reasons, but you can say there's nothing else out there like it. It doesn't look like another book, page by page. It doesn't read like another book because the structure is something that no one has ever done before. It's my own idea, right? And so it's like one of a kind. And then the publisher, when they first got the book, they loved it. They gave us an advance. And then somewhere in the process, they said, Robert, I think this book is just a little too weird. let's kind of soften it a little bit. Let's make it more like other books. So that business with the story and the interpretation, get rid of that. Just write a story and kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, the man who I mentioned here, Joost, the Dutchman who paid me, he stood by me, and because I said, I don't want to change it. This will either sink or swim the way it is. You know, it's a weird book, but weird sells. That's what makes it a powerful thing. So we stuck by it and we said, no, we're going to do it our way. So the moral of the story is, if I had tried to make it like other books, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. My book would not have succeeded. So by sticking to what makes me different, to what opened me up to ridicule, in fact, is what made the book so successful. So anyway.
This point really is well taken, because there's another guest on the show, Ramit Sethi, talks about financial things. One of the points he made on an earlier podcast was, I'm going to butcher the quote here, but it was something along the lines of, the market and people out there want to make you vanilla, but as soon as you become vanilla, they dump you because they already have vanilla.
So you really want to be tutti frutti.
Yeah, or like Neapolitan at the very least.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, is that what that is?
Yeah.
So, like,
I think.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
I'm gonna have to Google that later.
Maybe not.
I feel like Tutti Frutti would be fruitier than just one stripe of cake.
Yeah. Wouldn't have the chocolate.
Yeah, there'd be less chocolate.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Well, I don't know if I'm right. I'm just speculating. But the idea is, hey, you got to take those unique angles, because if somebody, and I've gotten lessons for interviewing and coaching and things like that, and I do sometimes discard the advice, because they'll say, you know, if you just do it this way, this is how most journalists do it. And I'm thinking, oh, that's good. And then I'll do it and I'll go, this is really boring. And my show now sounds like every other interviewer.
Exactly.
And there's a reason for that, because it's formulaic.
Yeah.
And I'll get a lot of feedback. Hey, just ask questions. Don't add any stories. Don't add any color. Just ask the questions. And it used to make me feel bad, but I realized this is just people trying to make me vanilla, who will immediately stop listening to the show once I become vanilla. Those same people will write in and go, the show's just lost something that you had before. I can't quite put my finger on it. And I'm going, I took your advice. That's the problem. I took your advice. I should have ignored you like I do everybody else. The book is supposed to be read a chapter a day. Did you think about what you were going to put for February? A page a day?
Yeah.
Did you think about what you would put for February 29? Did you agonize over what's going to go on that day? I think
I thought about it. I don't remember what was on that day.
It's adopt the hacker mindset.
Yeah.
It's only going to be read once every 4 years. So I figured you'd put something.
Yeah. To be honest with you, Jordan, I'd be lying if I said there was some incredible ulterior motive behind it. But I did think about it at the time. Like, I don't want to put a really common, powerful idea that everybody needs to read on February 29.
Right. Yeah.
Not to say that you don't want to read that, but maybe read it only every 4 years.
Yeah,
so.
That's funny. I thought about that. I thought, I bet this is something he thought, this isn't that important. I'll just put it in there. I'll put it on.
Everything's important, but it's not as important.
Right. Yeah, it's the 365th most important
366.
concept. 366th the most important concept. Retain the craftsman mindset. This is another concept from Mastery / The Daily Laws. The work is the only thing that matters, is what you wrote. And the idea that you give is cultivate profound dissatisfaction with your work. I both love and hate that, because of course we're always dissatisfied with our work and we want it to be better. But doesn't that kind of make you miserable in the process if you're never happy with what you create, or are those two different things?
Well, people who are craftsmen or craftspeople, if we have to say that.
Yeah, you're going to get canceled. I'm telling you.
Okay. So you're like building something, a table or any, something out of wood, and you don't have like a perfectionist attitude. The table will fall apart, right? Or it will be lopsided. So you learn to kind of make things symmetrical. You see the faults and the defects in what you created. You work with the wood itself, and you try and create something that's as perfect as possible. The mistake that most people make in building something, so first of all, I want you to think of yourself as a builder. You're literally building a house or a table or whatever it is. So that's starting your own business, that's writing a book, that's working on some project in your office. So you think of it like you're literally building something with your hands. It has to have a foundation. It has to be on something solid. It has to stand up. It has to look, reasonably symmetrical, etc. So you're actually like a craftsman, okay? So use that kind of mindset because it's a very powerful, very human mindset because we are natural builders. That's what makes us kind of human and powerful. Okay? So the problem that most people have, and believe me, I know it, when you're writing something or working on a project is you have no distance. You have no ability to analyze your own work.
Mm-hmm.
You think that everything you do is just golden and beautiful, or you think everything you do is awful or terrible, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can have other people look at it and who can kind of bring you back to reality and say, this is what's working, this isn't what isn't working. But oftentimes you can't trust other people, right? First of all, maybe they don't really know. Maybe they're not as knowledgeable on the subject. And also they might have a political axe to grind or whatever. So you have to become your own critic. You have to be able to see the flaws and what isn't working in your own creation, right? And sometimes, it's very hard to do that. You tend to kind of gloss over the things that aren't working. I know when I write a chapter, I lose perspective after time because I've spent so long on it that everything seems natural and good to me. And then when I come back to it a month later, it goes, no, that's not working, Robert. That's not working at all. And so that critical voice inside of me that says that isn't working is what pushes me to make something better and better and better and better. Now, you can go crazy with that. You can reach a point where you never end up finishing whatever you're making because you're always criticizing it. At some point, you have to say, it's done. It's 95% there. I'm never going to get to 100%. Okay, that's fine. I understand that. But to the degree that you're able to look at your own work with some distance and say, this isn't working for me, it could be better, is what's going to end up making it better, right? And so a lot of people have a hard time with that. I get that a lot when I read other people's books or manuscripts, etc. It kind of works, but God, this could be so much better. Mm-hmm. You didn't take the time. You didn't go through the process I'm just describing. You didn't think of how somebody else would read it, how an outside eyes would read it. You didn't think of where it might be boring. You assume that everyone's going to be interested in something that they're not going to be interested in. So take the time and learn how to criticize your own work and make it better and better and better. It's extremely important.
It seems like there's a point of diminishing returns when it comes to this. For example, I'll listen to an episode that's 3 years older, 2 years older, and I'll go, okay, there's a couple missed opportunities. I used to listen and go, cringe, this is awful, why did I release this? Now I listen and I go, okay, there's a couple of things I could have changed or added, or man, our audio quality has improved a lot since then, something along those lines. I remember hearing about, I think it was David Letterman, who used to watch tape of every show he did until 3 or 4 a.m., just beating himself up and treating himself like crap after every, was his show 5 days a week? I mean, that's a lot of time to spend telling yourself that you suck at your job and beating yourself up over every little opportunity or missed opportunity.
Well, that's not at all what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, it's different.
Okay, so after I finish a book, I never read it again. I never look at it again.
Really?
I have no idea. I have no desire to look at it again. In fact, it kind of repulses me.
That's funny.
It's like, I created it, get out of me. I don't want to look at it. I'm on to the next thing. So there's no point in the post-mortem. There is a point in things that you've done in life, in your interactions with people, to go through that kind of post-mortem process, to go, what could I have done differently that didn't create this particular problem? Okay? I highly advise that. So if you had a podcast that got you in trouble, then go through that post-mortem process to see what you might have done that caused it, and so you can learn the lesson is extremely important. But that's different from going back and criticizing a podcast that's already been created and it's out there. What value are you going to get? You're just going to be beating up on yourself, as you say. I mean, you could look at it constructively and say, I could be doing it a little bit better, right? It's all in the spirit that you do things in. So you could improve yourself. But my thing with my work is once the book is published, there's nothing I can do about it, right?
This is true.
It's out there. And in the process of writing, I've kind of learned already what it was that I didn't do quite right and what I could improve on. So the idea is to get, I think the essence of what we're talking here is the point isn't to beat up on yourself. The point isn't to make you feel bad about your own work, because that'll work against you. You have to kind of love and have a sense of excitement about the work itself. The idea is that you're able to kind of have some detachment from it. At certain key moments, you're able to look at it from a distance and to look at Jordan Harbinger on the screen and say, he needs to be doing this a little differently, as if you're looking at it from the outside, is very, very powerful skill. So the goal isn't to become so critical of yourself that you can't ever do anything in life. You need to have a degree of innocence about it. But if you have no voice inside of your head telling you that some things aren't really working, a voice that's somewhat like an outsider, then you're never going to be able to improve your work from the inside.
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of creators struggle with, because also, as much as you want to have external critics or cultivate your own critical eye, it it is for many of us hard to do without beating ourselves up or without attaching some sort of meaning to it. But it doesn't, that's not productive to do.
I guess I don't understand that. Maybe it's because of the way maybe I am, because I'm Jewish and I'm always kind of criticizing myself.
Yeah,
And
how can you not do it? Yeah.
kind of was sort of beaten into me. But when I'm writing something, I never get too attached to what I'm writing, right? Because I know that's really dangerous. Maybe it's because I've been, this is my 8th book that I'm working on right now. Maybe I've learned that.
Yeah.
But I never get too attached to it, because I know that that's going to be very problematic down the road. And I always know, so in the moment after I've written something that's very arduous and I go back to it and I go, this isn't working. Yeah, it's painful, undoubtedly, because we're all kind of lazy by nature. We tied the ribbon, we finished the screenplay, we did the project, it's over, I want to move on, right? That's natural.
Yeah, it's Johnny Depp not watching his own movies, right?
Right. But
I think that's who that is.
But I don't know. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think he like refuses to watch his own movie. There's a few actors that just say, "I'm never watching my own movie."
Well, that's the same thing. I don't want to read my own books. Yeah.
It's like very similar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you don't want to rush to the end, because, things can always get better. And your natural tendency is to be in a hurry because you want the product out there. You want all the accolades, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you develop this voice, if you're able to look at it with some detachment, it ends up becoming kind of an interesting game where you feel like I can always make something better, 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 better. It's kind of a very satisfying feeling to improve something and to be able to say that my first iteration was kind of weak and I've really strengthened it right now, as opposed to sending it out there early and then you have a little bit of doubt and then it isn't quite clicking together and people start criticizing it. So,
Self-sabotage dovetails nicely with our section here on self-sabotage that I'd love to go into. This is from, I think, The Laws of Human Nature. The attitude is, if we are fearful, we see negative in every circumstance. We don't take chances. We blame others for mistakes. If we are suspicious or negative, we make others feel those same emotions. Then we create those outcomes for ourselves at home and at work. There's a lot in here. That's not your exact wording, I don't think, but the idea that we can almost project our own insecurities onto other people and then have it come back at us, and then it looks to us like they're causing the problem. This is an eye-opening moment for, I think, a lot of people when they realize this is the case.
Well, I can illustrate it with a very simple example. You're at a party and somebody comes up to you haven't met before, or you go up to them and they're kind of nervous and insecure and they're kind of sweating a lot and their eyes are kind of blinking a lot. You find yourself getting very nervous in their presence, right?
Yeah.
You start even feeling a bit insecure. Maybe I'm causing that reaction. And that as I get insecure in their presence and my talking gets a little halting, the insecure person gets even more insecure. Like, this person isn't really interacting with me. Am I doing
weird around me? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it gets back and forth, back and forth. It gets worse and worse and worse. Or the opposite happens. You go up to that person, they're very confident, they're very secure in themselves, they're very calm, they have a calm energy. it just calms you down. And the conversation that ensues flows in this very natural, easy way. And then that person feels that you're kind of engaging. They engage more, on and on and on and on. So the idea is that we humans operate on a level that we're not aware of, which is on a nonverbal level, right? So we pick up the attitude, the vibrations, to use a 70s term,
Yeah,
from
man.
the
Groovy.
you're on my wave. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I'm on your wavelength.
Okay. We pick those up from the other person in ways we're not even aware of, and it influences how we are. So your attitude towards life, you have an attitude, right? And I call it the way you look at the world. It's a lens. That attitude can be complex, but it usually has a single dominant component. It could be anxious. You're anxious about everything, worried. It could be insecure. People are looking at me strange. Do people like me, etc.?
I think I have all of those so far. Continue.
Okay. No, I hope not. Or your attitude can be very adventurous. Everything seems exciting to me. I want to explore there. I want to go there. You're very open to things, right? Okay. So when you have that attitude, it goes out in the world. People sense it in a nonverbal way, in that animal way. They feel it off of you, right? And then it makes them respond in a certain way. And so if you have that anxious attitude, you're going to create all kinds of situations that are going to feed your anxiety. It becomes what I talk about in that chapter, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to find anxiety at every corner that you come upon, right? Because you're nervous, you're making other people nervous. You're supposed to take an action, you hesitate, and then it doesn't go very well because you hesitated. That makes you more nervous, etc. So you have to get the idea that you are sabotaging yourself with your attitude, right? And there have been some amazing books written on this aspect of human psychology that actually were kind of mind-blowing to me, to use another 70s expression. Sorry, man.
Oh, we still use that one.
Okay, all right. Things like the Pygmalion effect, which I hope in the next 20, 30, 40 years, people study more seriously in sciences and explain. But the idea is, in studies like teachers in schools, if a teacher thinks that the students are good and smart and deserving to go to Yale and Harvard and they're all brilliant, but never says anything about that, it's just they think it, it has an effect where the students work better, they get better grades, they're more excited. The attitude speaks to them, they feel it, right? So if you go up to somebody and you already anticipate that they're not very good, that they're not, that they're not going to succeed in life, it's going to create that feeling in them. So you have the power to make people feel a certain way by the attitude that you have, right? And think of that attitude. So there's the bad news is you are born with an attitude. There's a genetic component to it.
My kid is really careful, way more careful than me.
Yeah, and that's something wired into him or her. Him.
Soon to be a her in the picture, but that's we're talking about Jaden. He's the most careful baby at the park. He's very like, is this stable? And I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but I mean, the heart wiring is there.
Well, the classic example is an introvert or an extrovert. And the man who came up with that was Carl Jung, the great psychologist. He believed that there was definitely a genetic component in that people are born with a tendency to being introvert or born as an extrovert. Now, naturally, the parent will have an influence on that. But that is very deeply ingrained into you, that attitude. So that's the bad news, right? That you're born a certain way. If you're anxious, you're born with an anxious attitude. The good news is that you can change it. It's plastic. It has you can work around the edges, you can soften it, you can make it better. You're not going to, if you're anxious, you're not going to suddenly become this open adventure exploring type person. Okay, but you can become less anxious. You can realize that it's causing you problems, and then you can work to kind of alter this attitude, right? And so the first thing is you have to be aware of what your attitude is in life and the problem that it's causing and how it's infecting your relationships. And the second thing is to be aware of how you can take small steps to slowly begin to alter this attitude. So I tell people, for instance, who are born very anxious, and I understand that because I have a bit of that myself. It doesn't paralyze me, but for some people it paralyzes them. What I suggest is tomorrow you do something that you're not quite comfortable with. Not too radical. You're not suddenly going to go out naked in the streets running, etc., right? You're going to do something that that's a little bit outside your comfort zone. It's a little bit different from what you would normally do. Let's say that's going up to a stranger in the office or at a social affair and engaging them in conversation. Normally, whoa, I can't do that. Do it. All right. And you'll find, so explore those margins of what you wouldn't normally do that aren't dangerous. That person isn't going to kill you, hopefully, for going up to them. But try these things out. They're going to be able to, you'll see now, I don't need to be so anxious. And that by being open and wanting to talk to this stranger, they started talking to me on a level I've never experienced before. It's exciting, right? So that's sort of, your attitude is like your work of art. It's something you create. You're born with it, but you can change it, is the power that you have.
Yeah, you mentioned that and I think you said this earlier in the show, that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's almost like if you expect someone to disappoint you, there's a higher chance of that happening. It's not metaphysical or something like that. A lot of people
not at
think
all.
it's some sort of magic, but it's simply how you create the I'm trying so hard not to use the word energy because it sounds metaphysical, but you're creating that environment around you.
You're creating the vibes.
Yeah, the vibes. That's very scientific, yes.
The one example I thought that was really weird in the book that I thought was so interesting is this woman. It's a story of a woman who had a boss who was kind of abusive and was always criticizing her. And she didn't know how to react. No matter how she reacted, he only got worse and worse and worse. And a psychologist told her when you go into work, think of him as this great guy. She says, I can't do that. No, to listen to me, just go in there and think in your head, he's actually a wonderful person. He's got some problems, some issues, but he's actually a really interesting person. He's very complex. She says, what do you mean? Just do it. She did it, and suddenly he reacted in a way she had never expected before. He was kind of put off by it because he noticed she was acting different. He acted different in there. And so I thought this was really interesting. She never said anything. She only thought it. And this wasn't to 14-year-old students. This was to like a 40-year-old boss. He suddenly went on a different track because he detected something. You have a look of disbelief on you.
I just feel like it's not disbelief. It's actually, I know that this would work on me if we're using it as a technique. I know if somebody came with a totally different type of, to use your scientific lingo, vibe with me, that it would completely change the way that I react to them. Like, as much as I like to think and a lot of us like to think, I just am the way that I am. I know 100% that this would have an effect on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's a look of complete agreement, and instead of disbelief.
Well, I read you wrong.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. Maybe you need to read more of your own books.
Maybe I do.
But then you would never want to do that.
No, I don't. I don't.
You do mention becoming aware of our own attitude and observing it. And this seems useful. I think one of the reasons you give, the rationale you give for this is, do we instinctively blame others for things? How do we react when challenged? How do we judge and think of people when they're not around? This seems like a great way to reprogram a lot of negative behavior. If I'm the person that says, man, Ryan came over to film and he was late. That guy, his whole life is a mess, right? And we all know people that do that kind of thing. We don't want to be around them. They're annoying to work with. It pays for us, if we are that person, to nix that stuff as soon as possible. How do we observe our own attitude? That seems easier said than done.
Well, first of all, you kind of notice, you have an overall tenor or an overall mood to you, right? So if you are an anxious person, it's pretty obvious. You don't need like Sherlock Holmes to kind of, decipher that for you, right? When something new or novel comes up, your first reaction isn't, wow, I'm excited. It's, oh no, I'm nervous. This makes me uncomfortable. How you react to things in a general way, in a kind of a neutral circumstance, right? So you're thrown into some novel situation. You find yourself in a foreign city. Is your first instinct to take all your clothes out and go exploring and finding everything there and getting away from Americans and seeing what the culture is? Or is it to kind of stay in your hotel room and kind of watch, American television or things like that? In certain patterns in your life, how you react to things that are different or new will be extremely telling to whether you're an introvert, whether you're an extrovert, whether you're anxious, whether you're adventurous, on and on and on, right? So observe yourself in kind of these key moments. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's pretty clear. I know, for instance, that I am an introvert. That my tendency is I'm more on the shy side, although I've learned to kind of overcome that, right? And I see that in my social interactions. So you in your room, in where you're kind of quarantining, you could think that you're Napoleon Bonaparte, that you're wonderful, that you're amazing, that you're so bold. But then the moment you go out in the world, it's extremely different. You realize your weaknesses, your limitations. So being out interacting with people is going to reveal 100% your attitude towards life because you can't control it. In your room, you could be Walter Mitty. You could be imagining yourself as anything out there, right? But when you're with people, it becomes very clear that you're shy or that you're extroverted, that you're out there wanting to engage with people. So the key to discovering your attitude is to see how you are with people, right? How you interact. So, somebody new approaches you, like that scenario I said earlier, is your first reaction, oh no, get away from me, or an interesting person, because somebody new to meet, right? Those are very clear signs of what your attitude is. I mean, there are other things as well, how you respond to criticism, right, from other people. So
Get defensive, tear them down privately in my own mind.
right, that's your reaction.
Yes. Is that healthy?
No. So the other reaction...
Didn't mince words at all.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, John. The other reaction is, they're right, I'm a worthless worm. God, how awful I am. Okay, that's another kind of reaction. Or the third reaction is, there's something interesting there. I could learn from that. Maybe there's something in truth to it, Maybe I have to take it seriously. You have to look at the person making the criticism and see and judge whether they have a valid point, that whether they have no political axe to grind. I can remember when I was about 24 years old, I was in New York working as a journalist. I thought I was a hotshot journalist.
Sure.
Sure.
New York journalist, 24. It all adds up.
Okay. I wrote this article it was kind of for a travel magazine that I was working for. I wrote this travel article about Italy, about the Amalfi Coast. I thought it was the greatest thing since Gore Vidal. I was, wow. And then the editor invited me for lunch. Okay. He's going to tell me.
I'm getting promoted.
Yeah, right. And then after his third martini or whatever he was drinking, he goes, Robert, you are not a writer. You are not writer material. That article was all over the place. You have no discipline. Your language is is going in all directions. You're not connecting to the audience, to the reader. If I were you, and I don't mean this harshly, I would go to law school or business school, and I would get out of writing.
Oh my God, I'm cringing for you, and this is years, decades later.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear.
So I was trying to remember the name of this guy the other day, but I can't remember his name. I can see him very clearly, and I had this image in my mind that's very vivid.
I mean, look, if he has 3 martinis at lunch, he's dead already, so it doesn't matter.
So the image that played in my mind was like a house that on the outside kind of looks good, but if you looked at the attic and the interior of it, you'd see that the wood is all rotten and termites have kind of eaten it away and things are about to fall. That was the image that came into my mind of what was going on the inside of this man.
Oof.
But afterwards, I was very obviously pained by it. I thought, what an asshole. He's wrong.
Right.
But then as time went by, I processed it and I go, no, there's truth to what he was saying. I don't really like journalism. And because I don't really like it and I don't really fit, my language is a little bit odd for the genre. It was a little too literary, what I had written, right? maybe I was meant to be a novelist or a screenwriter or to write something else. So there was validity in what he said. And I got out of journalism and I decided I'm going to go to Europe and I'm going to wander around and I'm going to write a novel kind of thing. And then that ended up failing.
Well, yeah,
But
you ended up working construction in the home of
nearly
the
dying
Minotaur.
in a hospital. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, if the guy needed, and I made a dark joke earlier, but it sounds like he needed 3 martinis to break bad news to you. He actually was probably a really nice person for doing that. He didn't want to do
Probably.
that. He did it for your sake.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't take his advice to heart
No,
because
now you're a writer, so I guess he failed.
I knew that I had something there.
Mhm.
It's just I was in the wrong